Hello, happy Thursday, friends. Hello, hello. Let's make sure everybody can hear me. I'm really excited for today's tutorial. We are going to we're going to continue our theme of doing some color mixing, and today we're going to do some really fun color mixing with yellows and blues to create some really fun watercolor backgrounds. Hello, welcome to Craft Your Joy Live. I'm Lisa Hetrick. I see friends popping in. Oh, so many friends. Oh, new friends. Janny from Minnesota has made it to the live. Oh, I hope things are going okay out there. The Midwest is kind of socked in with some of the wildfire, like the air quality. Here in Maryland, the air quality is a little wonky today too. It's actually like in a danger level. So it's a little hazy out there. So wherever you are, I hope everything is okay. Hi, Rhonda. Hello, Cherie, Kathy, Gloria. Great to visit with you again. Kathy and Dawn. Hello. There's so many friends that have joined us. So many friends. I'm super excited. Okay. And there's some really beautiful comments already happening in the chat. I love when you guys just start chatting with each other. It's super, super fun. Okay. All right, friends. First of all, my chair is creaking and I didn't have enough time to run to the garage to get WD-40. So there's going to be that noise happening. Fun. Oh, Dawn just shared Detroit's air quality is the worst it's ever been. Oh, I'm so sorry. I hope that we get like a little bit of a clearing and some relief from that air quality. Okay, friends. All right, we're going to have some fun today. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the supplies. But as always, the supplies are listed down below in the description. I do have them there already for us. If you're watching on Facebook, it's not there. If you're watching on YouTube, it's there. Hello, Heidi. So Heidi just popped in too. Okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to go to the down camera, and I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of the supplies and the inspiration for today's tutorial. Okay, hello, hello. Okay, today we are using the Showers of Blessings stamp set. We're going to be using the bloom and the details in the bloom. We're also using this big honkin' stamp in here, the rain stamp. And I'm also using the sentiment, the best things in life aren't things, from the Best Things in Life stamp set. I love this stamp set. I need to like do some more tutorials with that stamp set. It's been a while. It's been a while. Okay. I have some glue, some brushes. Let's move this out of the way. I've got some watercolor. Boy, this chair is really creaky. I hope it's not too distracting. I can get like in a position where it might not creak too much. Okay. Like not that position. Hello, Joe. She finally made it to a live chat. I'm using Gina K Wild Dandelion today, and we're going to be using that to color up our flower. So here's the inspiration for our card today. We're going to be creating this flower and this sentiment and doing this rain background, except for the background, we're going to be doing some emboss resist with some watercolor backgrounds. And here's the inspiration for that. So when, first of all, I'm going to move this keyboard. So when the Showers of Blessings stamp set launched with Gina K, it's been 2 weeks, I was doing some experimenting with the rain and playing around with the different color mixes. And when I was cleaning up this week, I saw this on my desk and I'm like, oh, that's my inspiration for today. Doing some watercolor backgrounds for our stamped card projects. Hello, Peggy. We have some more friends that have popped in. Super fun. Okay. And Miss M, hello. So glad you made it too. Okay, the two colors that I'm going to be using, the two watercolors I'm going to talk about today, are Hansa Yellow Light and Phthalo Blue. Okay, so this is like a lemon yellow light, lemon yellow, and phthalo blue is phthalo blue. And no matter what kind of watercolor set you have, um, phthalo blue is or what color brand you have. Phthalo blue is a very common color. And we're working with cool colors. So I left this in here so that you could see what the warm colors would be. But I want to work with the cool colors today. Super, super, super vibrant for our background. Now I have some Gina K designs. This is a jelly bean green cardstock cut to an A2 size. I am using Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor. 100% cotton cold press paper. If you're new here, this is my favorite watercolor paper for paper crafting projects because it's 100% cotton, it's reasonably priced, and it's great for our paper crafting projects. And it already comes cut to 5x7, which makes it really easy. Friends that have been with me a long time know that this is the one I talk about every week. Okay. So first we're going to dive in to our color mixing lesson. And I want to pop back on the camera real quick. So we're going to dive into a little bit of a color mixing lesson. And I'm going to talk about mixing the yellow and the blue to get different kinds of greens, different hues of greens, and that's what we're going to do for our background, using greens and yellows to kind of create this really like fresh kind of color. Okay, so color mixing is super fun. So I would encourage you, we've been doing a lot of different color mixing techniques. We've been doing it with our inks. We've been doing it with our paints lately. So I'm taking a bit of a deeper dive in today's lesson into this watercolor mixing with paint. Okay, so last week we did a lot when mixing up the maroons and we used Gina K inks. Today we're going to do paint and I'm going to walk you through that. One other thing, let's go ahead and take my face off. One other thing I wanted to bring up, and if you have a question along the way, just go ahead and let me fix that camera real quick. Sorry about that. If you have a question along the way, just pop Q in the question in the comments so that I see it, and then you know, I make sure I answer it for you. Okay, now one of the other things I wanted to share was I got this request from Heidi, who's with us today, and I wanted to get some feedback from everybody. She was very much interested in learning how to make a color chart for mixing. Now, what a color chart is you have this, all of the colors in your palette, and you have them on this X and Y axis, and we mix them so that you can see all of the different color combinations you can come up with using whatever set that you have. So here were just a couple. It inspired me when Heidi shared that with me this week, because I was like, oh, I love doing this. And, you know, with my sets. And the funny thing is, this is a set of 15 colors for Daniel Smith that I now have like into other set. But look at all these color combinations that you can make with just this set of 15. Like this set of Mgram 12 colors, I don't know where it is. So kind of funny, but look at all these different colors that can be made. So I wanted to bring that up because we've been doing all of these color mixing experiments and kind of having our little Craft Your Joy lab time together. So with our experiments. So pop it in the chat if this is something that you're interested in for a tutorial. And it would be a little bit more of an elongated tutorial. And you could come to the tutorial with yours, and I would provide this chart, but you could come to the tutorial with the set that you have and we could mix it real time. So I'm thinking about doing something like that. So I think it would be fun. So let me know if that's something you might be interested in. Okay, first let's get started with our lesson in color mixing for Hansa Yellow Light and Phthalo Blue. So Hansa Yellow Light, Phthalo Blue. Some of the combinations of colors that we can make going from yellow to blue. And I'm going to walk you through this, and you can actually go backwards too. I'm going to walk you through how we're going to do this, because that's going to create that gradient of color that we're going to use for our watercolor background. So super fun. All right, let's get started. Let's get started. I'm seeing people share that they are interested in the color mixing chart. Super fun. I do mine a little bit different than maybe you could always, YouTube it and all that other stuff. A lot of people do these color charts, and there is kind of a formula for doing it, but you know me, I kind of like don't always follow the rules and like to experiment more versus follow the rules. So Joe just said, yes, I want to learn how to avoid creating brown. Yeah. And that's precisely what that color chart is really for, just to kind of give you those formulas for color mixing. So it's something that I'm thinking about doing. It may end up being like something that I'm going to do in the Craft Your Joy community, which you have free access to. But we'll see. Let's figure it out together, right? Okay, so I've got Hansa Yellow Light and I have Phthalo Blue. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to do these mixes. So my brush is wet, but not sopping wet. And also I'm using the Princeton Heritage Round. The reason why is it doesn't hold as much water as the Silver Black Velvet does. So I'm using this one, but really you can control the water. And I'm coming into my pan and I'm getting, you can see how juicy I'm getting this, getting quite a bit. I kind of rubbed that up against, I went in there about like 10 times. I'm going to create a pool of color here, right here. Ah, Kathy just, thank you, Kathy. She said, I love the color mixing ideas you have in your Welly lesson from this month. Yes, that was mixing up purples. Okay, so see how I have quite a bit. This camera looks a little wonky. There we go. I have quite a bit of color. Let's close this up. Yellow down here. And it looks a lot like whole milk, right? It's a good concentration of color. Sorry, I keep kind of janking around with that camera a little bit. So let's make sure we've got a nice concentration of that color. So in this case, we're focusing on more yellow, and we're going to add blue to it to create that gradient of color right here. And then I'm going to make these pools of color that we're going to use in our paper crafting project. Okay, I've got a nice big honkin' blotch of color here. Bloosh. Now, cleaning off my brush, kind of drying it off a little bit, and I'm going to dip my brush into Phthalo Blue. Phthalo Blue is super concentrated and staining, but it's like one of my super favorite colors. You can kind of equate it to in ink, in printer ink, like cyan. I'm going to dip my brush in here, 1, 2, 3, and that actually feels like too much. And I'm going to just drop a little drop in that center there. Okay. Clean off my brush. Then mix this color up. So I'm really just adding a little bit of that color and seeing the color that I get. Now I've got that pool of color. But first, I'm going to take a little bit of the Hansa Yellow and I'm going to paint it down on here so that we can just start to see the graduation of color that we're going to get. These are the different hues of color that we're going to be able to make. Okay, cleaning off my brush, grabbing some of this color that I made, and then adding it here next to it. You can start to see that we've got a little bit of yellow green happening. Not super intense. Look how bright that lemon yellow, Hansa Yellow Light is, which is like lemon yellow. Added a little bit of that phthalo blue. We're starting to skew more on the green side. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to create another puddle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Look at that. create another puddle of color. Now normally I would just keep adding blue to this, but I'm gonna create, I just turn the camera just a smidge here so that you can see that puddle. Boy, I must have bumped that camera right before we went live. Now this has a little, I want it to be a milk, like a whole milk consistency. So you can see how opaque this looks. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Sorry, I keep fidgeting with the camera. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more. My brush is clean. I'm going to add, let's make sure I got a little bit of water there. A little bit more. Like two little droplets. Clean off my brush. Hello, Carmen from Toronto. And now I'm going to add, listen to me. I'm going to mix these two together. And then we're going to paint it. We're going to paint it right here so that you can start to see. Oh, okay, love it. Now, yellow, we've added a little bit of phthalo blue, then like 2 drops of phthalo blue, so to speak, like doop boop, 2 boops. And this color is a very common color in brands called May Green, M-A-Y green. And I love it. But here's the deal. If you don't have it, you can mix it, which makes it kind of fun. Really, really fun. Okay, I'm going to keep these 2 because we're going to use them. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10 is random. I just know that I want to get a lot of color down here, so I'm just going to kind of dip in, just get more yellow than blue. Okay. Now, clean off my brush. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm adding a bit more. Now you can, I'm just kind of stepping us out so that we can see that graduation of color, but you really can just add a lot and get right to the greens if you want to. Clean off your brush. Just kind of showing you all the middle steps too. Adding, just really adding all of that phthalo blue in. You can even start to see how my colors are changing here. Ah, this is going to be more like a viridian. That's a little closer. No, it's a little too close. So see how close it is to this? So I'm going to take another little boop of phthalo. Clean off my brush. Add a little more phthalo blue in there. Might need to add a little bit more to kind of come across. It's starting to get a little darker. There we go. A little darker. Let's add a little more. Oop, that might have been too much. Cheryl just said, oh my, what a pretty green. I know, isn't it? And clearly I just want to keep making it. So, yay. Okay. This is more in line with what I want to get. There we go. See how we're starting to get more. I got a little too much water in here, but that's okay. See how we're starting to get a little darker. So if your puddle of color starts to get like too watered down, because I'm just splashing paint around, just add some more yellow. Just add more. Just bring it back to life. I'm going to add a little more yellow here. Then go in, add some more blue. Ooh, that was a lot of blue. So you see how it can go back and forth and back and forth? Just keep playing till you get back to that color that you had right here. See how this one wants to be friends with this one? So here we go. Okay. Now I'm probably going to do this 2 more times. I'm saving my puddles here. Now normally what would happen, boy, I'm really fidgety with the camera today. Normally what would happen is I would just keep adding colors to this one and painting and adding and painting. But I want you to see all of the different puddles of color that we have because we're going to use them to paint our watercolor background. All right. Dawn just said, I love how you say that's okay. Well, it is okay, right? Because we're learning. This is the Craft Your Joy Lab today. We're doing an experiment, right? We're experimenting with color mixing. We're learning. And then if you do too much in color mixing, like you add too much blue, you can add some more yellow and you can get it back. And that's the beautiful thing about color mixing. And I think it's like super fun in that way because there's no right or wrong. You're really just experimenting. Oh, I'm pretty sure I kind of went a little bananas with that blue this time, but maybe not. Look, so I added, that was quite a bit of blue. Oh, this is such a pretty color. Now look at this green. Oh, I'm loving it. That green. Now this particular green, so see how we started yellow? A little bit of green, adding another little bit of green. We got that May green color. Add a little bit more, no, blue. Adding a little bit more blue to the yellow, and we start to get to like a viridian. Adding a little bit more blue to that yellow, and we're starting to turn over to the blue side and becoming, this is like a little bit more of a turquoise teal color. So let's mix up 2 more. I'm going to get us back to phthalo. All right, just kind of getting a nice generous amount to make that whole milk. Nice generous amount of that yellow. Now, like I said, I'm making these different puddles because we're going to actually use these as our palette for our watercolor background. But if you're doing this at home and you just want to keep doing the different colors, you would just keep adding to the first one that you worked with. All right, let's get this one going. Oh boy. Let's get this one going. So we're super close to this color above us. So I'm going to clean off my brush. So I've recreated this color right here. Clean off my brush. Now I'm going to add a little bit more phthalo. That was like 3 swipes. Now the swipes and the amount is really controlled by you. So you want to make sure that your brush is not sopping wet, but it does have water. And then you're just adding a little bit. So I would suggest when I say 3 swipes, that's because 3 swipes is kind of like a good start, or 1 swipe and then working your way up. So I'm going to drop that in and then I'm going to add that in. So just experiment with it. Now see how this color is already we're starting to make that pivot over to blue. Oh my gosh, look at that color, friends. Look at that. I love that. Oh, that's juicy. That's a juicy color. All right, now we're going to make one more. So we'll have like 6 different colors that we've mixed up. Let me get a nice generous amount of our Hansa Yellow Light. You can see my brush barely has any water on it. It's very, very, I just keep dipping it in just a smidge. Getting that whole milk consistency. You can see all that pigment on the brush. Let's get that down and into my glass mat here. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, coming back in with some phthalo. Drop, 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 drop. I'm pretty sure phthalo is such a intense color. I just love it so much. You can see how this green looks a lot like this one. So I'm going to clean off my brush and I'm going to add some more blue because I really want it to go the other way. I want it to come. Now I've got more of like what I have above here. Cheryl has a really good question. I'm going to add a little bit more blue, and then I'm going to answer that question. Okay, so we're getting closer back to phthalo. No, that's not really closer to phthalo, but let me add a little bit more. Then I can get it closer to phthalo. Oh boy, that's juicy. All right, I'm loving these colors. We're going to keep it here. So we've gone from yellow back to blue. So Cheryl just asked a question. Let's pop that question up. This is a great question. And not a weird question at all. Can the extra color you create and don't use be picked up and put into a palette, or should you be doing this on a palette to begin with? Oh yeah. You know, mixing these colors, if you're doing them on your glass mat, like I am, and you know what, let me pop back up. I'll pop my face back up. If you're doing this color mixing on a mat, like a glass mat next to your work surface, you're going to end up using up all that color. We're going to end up using it all up. Now, if in your watercolor palette, I would suggest just mixing them in your watercolor palette or on the plate that you might be working with. And then all of those pools and puddles of color will be there and they will dry there. And then all you need to do is add water to reactivate them if you want to use those colors at another time. But here's the super fun part about these kind of color mixing. You can start like a little sketchbook, and it doesn't have to be a super expensive sketchbook. I think this is an Arteza one. You could start a little sketchbook with formulas, like little mix your own combinations, and with the watercolors that you have. Like this, in this case, like here were all the different turquoises that I had in that were convenience mixtures. So they were already existing. Daniel Smith, Winsor Newton, M. Graham, P.H. Martins. And then I was like, well, what would it take for me to mix my own? So we've got that blue, that phthalo blue, and that May green. And I got that turquoise. And we did that today. Got that turquoise right here. So it's kind of nice to make like these little color formulas for yourself and kind of keep them, because then you can always go back to them. And that's also why like these color charts are really, really useful, because you can say, okay, I've got lemon yellow, and what does that look like when I mix it with red orange, you know, and you can see like, oh, I like that color right there. How do I make that? Well, that's permanent magenta and cerulean blue, and I made that really, really beautiful violet. So it's kind of fun. And then after a while, all of those combinations just become shorthand for you, and you end up just knowing them and loving them. So look at all these fun colors we made. Which one's your favorite? So pop in the chat which one's your favorite. I think every time I do this, friends, so we did it today, every time I do this, it really does, it's different, because it does depend on the ratio of colors. Let's get to the page there, Lisa. Ratio, the amount of colors you put in. So look, this was more of a graduation of color, so I just was adding like one drop, little bit to get my way back. But so that was a lot more than this. See how we went a lot quicker to get back to blue. So kind of fun. So Cheryl just said I've done swatching, but now she needs to do one of those charts. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's like one of those therapeutic like things I like to do. Hello, Judith. Judith just popped in. Okay, now we're going to get to our card project, the background, and then we're going to be painting the flower. And I have a whole nother little technique to share for painting the flower. All right, I've got my brush, and what I did is I stamped the raindrops in, use the emboss resist technique. So I stamped it with embossing ink, and I have some clear emboss powder on here. And I already heated that up so that we didn't have to do that. Okay. Second row, first in. Kathy just said this one. Yeah, that's a good color. Loving it. Yes, everybody's sharing which ones that they loved. All right, my brush is wet, my paper is dry. We are going to paint on, and the water's tinged a little bit green, so that's okay. We're going to paint on just some water on to this whole thing. We're getting it nice and juicy and wet. And I have this turned horizontally because we're going to start by just dropping in some color in our graduation of color here. Yikes! Loving that. I'm not necessarily cleaning my brush between each, but look at this. Oh, I'm loving it. Loving this. So we're using the colors that we mixed, and the water, the brush is wet, the paper is wet. This is wet into wet technique. But look at that juicy, juicy background. And this was all, whoops, got a little sploosh. Oh, this was all just from the colors that we made to create that look and feel. Now, I'm going to just dip my brush a little bit into that Hansa yellow light. I want to add just a little bit of that yellow at the top. Get a little bit more of that May green there. Oh, juicy juiciness. Loving this. Okay. It may be a little too juicy. We'll see. Just kind of drop in some of that color. I'm going to take a little bit, just kind of sploosh. Let's do a little splooshes. All right, I'm going to resist the urge. I'm going to leave this alone. Okay. We're going to move it to the side. These darker greens. Ah, Cheryl just said the darker greens remind me of ocean water. They do, don't they? Love it. All right, so we used our palette of colors that we mixed and applied them to the watercolor paper, wet into wet, and we have our rain that's doing the emboss resist. Love it. Gonna set that to the side and let that dry. Okay, now I've made all these beautiful colors, but we're gonna say goodbye to them because we're going to do some stamping. Goodbye, beautiful colors. I thought I would use you all, but I didn't. So, again, if you don't want to say goodbye to your beautiful colors, you would mix them up in a palette like this, your plate or your palette. All right, let's go ahead. Here are my two paints. Put those right there. Now, whoa, here we go. You know what? I'm wondering if that's going to be too much. Here is what we're going to paint. This card is going to be a little wonky, I think, but let's see. All right, the stamps that I'm working with is the Big Honkin' Bloom. We've got this, it's a little bit dirty, so let's just go ahead and clean that up. The Big Honkin' Bloom from the Showers of Blessings stamp set. I'm going to stamp this out in Wild Dandelion. Let's turn this way. Stamp this out in Wild Dandelion. And then I'm going to take the detail stamp and stamp that in Wild Dandelion. And just kind of come over. Can't really see, but apply that and get that detail. So we've got that detail in our bloom. And now what we're going to do, there might be a chance that I need to clean this water. So let's go ahead. So my water is like super, super green. And I didn't bring two waters with me. So here's what we're going to do. I've got another glass. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of water in it from my sprayer. Now I'm switching brushes. I'm going to a smaller brush because I want to control my details a little bit. So my brush is wet, paper is dry. We are going to we're going to activate the color that's already here in Wild Dandelion simply by running my brush around the edges. Now I've done this technique a couple times, especially with Wild Dandelion, because I love the yellow. I love this yellow. The Wild Dandelion color is like, it's a pretty warm color. It's super, super vibrant. And I love painting with it. So I'm going around the edges and I'm leaving some white. And I'm just kind of coming around. I'm activating this color. And this is going to be my base layer of yellow. And then we're going to add some more watercolor, some Hansa yellow light over top. But I'm starting to get that first layer of color, and I actually love it. We could just leave it that way, but we're going to add a few more details to it and add a little bit more yellow with the Hansa yellow light. Okay, love that. Now down here, I'm not going to worry about the stem. We're going to mix up a green when we go to paint our stem. Now I'm going to go in here. Get me some Hansa yellow light down here. The paint that I'm using Da Vinci today, but remember, you could use the same techniques apply to whatever watercolor paint that you have in your stash or whatever watercolor set. So I encourage you to experiment with what you have. You don't have to have these paints to do this technique. All right, cleaning off my brush. Everything is dry. My brush is wet. My paper is dry. Lemon yellow, yellow. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water towards the bottom of my blooms here. Because I'm just going to drop in some of the lemon yellow. Oh, loving this. I also feel an experiment coming on. So very, very bright yellow, just dropping in just a little bit of the paint at the bottom, just to enhance what I have here. I don't want to, resisting the urge to paint in all of my white areas. Don't want to lose them. Now my brush is clean, my paper is dry, and I'm going to do this tap, tap, tapping. Many of you, this is not your first time seeing me do this. I'm just kind of tapping out those edges so that they're not super hard. Now, see how we've gotten, like, it's a little bit, let's just blend that one out a little bit. Now, I love the lemon yellow nature of it. I'm going to leave it be. And I'm going to hit this with a little bit of heat. So let's just dry this. Let's see how our background's doing. She's doing good. Oh, I think that this is going to be an interesting card. It's going to feel a little day glowy, I think. Let's just hit this with a little bit of heat. All right, loving it. Okay. Now, I'm going to bring another yellow into the mix here. Oh, my chair. It's just making this scratchy noise. I'm going to bring another yellow into the mix here. This one, let's grab it. I didn't think I was going to do it, but now I am. Let's grab it out. It's called, here we go. Aerolide yellow, which is, here's what I'm going to say, it's a darker yellow, right? So we have our cool yellow and our warm yellow. So kind of like a Hansa yellow deep, which is a little more orangey. But the reason why I'm going to use this color, first of all, let's get all the blue off of it, right? Messy painter that I am. I'm going to use this color and we're going to paint in. I am getting, my brush is not super wet. I didn't spray the pigment. I'm getting a juicy, you can see how I'm rubbing the brush in here. Getting a whole milk consistency on the tip of this brush. And I'm going to come back in and we're going to just follow the lines of the stamp, the detail stamp that I stamped in. just follow the lines and add this detail back in to these petals, just to create a little bit more detail here. Just kind of giving it a little bit more texture and dimension. So it was kind of, you could just, if you didn't want to do this part, or you didn't feel like you wanted to paint the lines back in, you could easily just do the watercolor work that we just did, and you can stamp it in over top if you wanted to. Now notice that we've got like a darker yellows down here, lighter at the top, but this petal right here is starting to fade a little bit, so I'm just going to come in. Oh, it might need a little tiny bit of water. Really do have a consistency here of whole milk. So I'm going to come in right here and just kind of follow the arc and just kind of bring that petal back to life. That's a little more intense than I wanted it to be, but that's okay. Okay. So now I'm just going to bring all the petals back to life. So we have a nice little contrast between a washy watercolor look and the line work, which gives it a little bit more texture and dimension. Just kind of fun. You could also do this if you just wanted to do the watercolor work. You could also stamp this in black. But I kind of wanted that yellow. I love painting with that, with the wild dandelion, because I think it really just is a beautiful yellow. Now, some of this looks a little bit intense, but it's going to dry back a little bit. And I have another example that I have. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of my lemon yellow. Now we're going to mix up a green for the bottom, for the bottom of the petal and the stem. So we're going to mix up, we're going to start pretty light and see what, and then we're going to add, ooh, I dipped right in there. Let's add a little bit. This green is pretty bright, so I'm going to start painting this green in first. Brush is wet, paper is dry, and I'm going to paint in some water right where we were. Now you can see that I'm holding the brush. I'm choked up on the brush. This is the ferrule of the brush. I'm kind of choked up because this is a nice little detail brush. This feels very comfortable. It's sort of like holding a pen or a pencil. And I'm just going to drop that watercolor right in. And if some of the yellow is still wet, it's just going to blend in. Now it's super vibrant, a little too vibrant, kind of like yellowy, like a yellow green. I want it to be a little darker. If you don't want to mix this color, some of the other colors you might have in your palette that would give you that dark green that we're gonna, oh boy, I went too blue. That dark green that we're going to mix is sap green, or like a chromium, maybe even an olive. You see how I'm going back and forth with this? I'm going to leave that side there so you can see I'm going back and forth to kind of get that darker green. Let's take a peek. See that darker green? Love that. Okay, clean off my brush. This is starting to dry pretty quick, probably because I have a fan on in here in the studio. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in, drop this in, let it kind of do its thing with the water, but I am coaxing it around a little because I can. And I don't have as much water happening here. Can even just kind of take some of this up a little bit. Can even extend. Remember how over the last couple weeks I've been talking about how you can edit out things in your stamp? Well, you can also edit in. So that stem doesn't go all the way up there, but it does look kind of neat and realistic for the flower, just for you to extend it. So see how I'm extending that? Super cute. Okay. Loving that. I kind of love that. Oh, take care, Joe. Joe just has to step out. No worries. You can always watch the replay. So that's kind of cool, just kind of extending that out and up into that flower. All right. We're going to let this dry a little bit. Actually, it is pretty dry. Now, you can run this through your die cut. Now, there is a coordinating die in this stamp set. Of course, it's way over there, out of my hand's reach. There's a coordinating die that goes with this. So here's one that I painted yesterday. But what we're going to do is I'm going to hand cut this out because I want, the coordinating die gives you a little bit of an edge around it. I want to go a little closer to this. So one of the ways to get closer is to cut it out with the coordinating die and then just trim off that extra little bit of white. But I'm going to fussy cut this because I'm going to go right to the edge. Now, I love to fussy cut. And if you notice, I'm a left-hander and I'm cutting with my right hand. So I never learned how to use scissors with my left hand. I've shared this story before because when I was in school, when I went to school, kindergarten and all the, early grades, they put the scissors in your right hand. So that's how I learned. So I can do a lot of things with both hands, which is super cool. I love it. It's a superpower. All right, so I'm using the edges that I cut. Oh, that's getting a little bit juicy. I'm using the edges that I painted as just my guide. You can see as far as the scissors go, what I do is I move the paper. I don't move the scissors. Well, of course I'm using the scissors, but I don't like move the scissors around the flower. Oh, that was a little wet right there. I used the paper. Move the paper. Okay. Oh, I'm loving the extensions of the petals. The extensions into the petals. Just rounding that out a little bit. Oops, that was kind of wonky. All right, now going to bring our background back in. This still feels a little bit wet. I want it to be dry. So let's go ahead and hit this with a little heat. I'm going to turn it upside down. Oopsie. Okay, now see how the watercolor has faded back. So we did a pretty light washy layer. So that watercolor and all those color mixes that we made that were like super, super vibrant. See how this has more than one layer on it? It's faded back once it's dry. And that's one of the beautiful things about watercolor. If we wanted to go in, I could even add a little bit more and to some areas. I'm going to show you that. So if I wanted to go in, let's take a little bit of this color that we have here. Let me find a good spot for it. Probably right in here. See how I could just start to add some in and deepen that color. Now to get those edges softened, you just go tap, 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 tap. Soften out the edges, tapping with a clean, wet brush. Things that look a little wonky, you just take it away. And then you end up with a little bit more of intensity of color there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just dry this too. There we go. I see you all chatting, soaking up all the techniques. That's so good. Teaching the techniques is like my superpower. I almost sometimes get less interested in the actual card as I do in creating the techniques to build it. All right, so here's our flower that we created. This card is going to be a little funky. It's going to be a little funky compared to our inspiration, right? That's okay. I'm digging it. All right, I am going to take some of my Gina K glue. We're going to get this base down. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. I've got a wet towel here because that could end up everywhere, believe me. Let's get our glue down here. I'm using some Gina K Connect glue. And I love this glue because it works really well on watercolor paper. And I'm just going to free range eyeball this. It also gives me some time to move it around before I just start to like push it down to adhere it. So I'm just going to hold this down. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl just said, I love your tutorials. They're so chock full of useful info to explain the whys of the technique so you feel confident. I am so happy to hear that. I'm basically, just to kind of tell you how my brain works, when I'm sharing these techniques with you, I am sharing them to you the way my brain thinks about them, right? And the way I'm working them out in my head. So you're kind of getting like just that real time, this is what's going on in my head as I'm walking it out with you and showing you like all the different things. Like things don't always, you can plan, but things don't always turn out the way you expect they're going to turn out. So you kind of have to like know how to play around with it a little bit. Oh, this is really wild. This card is wild. Play around with it a little bit to get the feeling that you want. Now, oh, Kathy's here. Hey, Kathy. Hey, friend. Okay, so here is the cane for the umbrella. Okay, and we're going to use the cane to be the bottom of the flower. And we're going to cut that cane off. But I don't love that the cane is not the same color. I stamped the cane in jelly bean green or grass green. And I don't love that it's not the same color. But that's okay. We're going to fix that. Or not fix it. We're going to adjust. I'm going to put a little bit of foam tape on the back of this big honkin' flower that we did. Oh my goodness. Me peeling the paper off. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Okay. Now I'm going to come in. Now this card is really, it's going to be day glowy. Okay, so here's the bottom of my cane here. And you know what? I'm not so concerned about like the cane. Look at me. I'm just going to chop that off so I can get my spacing. Because I am going to trim this off like towards the bottom here. So let's go ahead and pop our little bloom up here. Oh my gosh, I'm loving that. Okay, let's put a little glue. Here's where I'm going to cut. I just put a little notch in that little cane. I was just going to teach you how to draw the line yourself, but look at all that blue and turquoise that we have there from our experiment. So let's just go ahead and use the cane from the umbrella. And you know, I don't even think it's called a cane. I don't even know why I'm calling it a cane because it looks like a cane. It's actually just the umbrella handle in the stamp set. So that looks like this. The umbrella handle. Kathy can attest. The words that come to your brain when you are doing a live are, you know, interesting. And they might not be accurate. Most of the time they're not. They're not accurate. Okay, so this blue. Oh, Kathy just asked the question. Did you fussy cut this out rather than the die? Yeah, so this is what happened. When you use the die, I love it. I love the way it looks, but I wanted a little bit more of a tighter cut. So I went in and just kind of cut out that extra white just by following around the edges of the bloom to get that tighter look to it. It has a lot more contrast. Like I love dyes and I love the little outer edge that we get from them. But when I wanted to like hone in and just have that flower like pop off the card, I like to just kind of fussy cut that extra out. So, and we also did a little bit of editing in this channel. We've been talking about editing out things in your stamps, and today we talked about editing in. by adding a little bit more of an extension onto the bottom of our petals here to kind of create that look in the flower, just a little bit more realism. And I just totally nerded out there. Totally nerded out. Thanks, Kathy, for the question. I love getting all nerdy. All right, I want to replicate that color, so we're going to mix that back up. We've got this Hansa Yellow Light, getting it into that milk, that 100% whole milk consistency down here on the glass mat. I guess I shouldn't have cleaned up that color so quickly. Take a little bit of this phthalo blue. We're going to pop that in until I get that color match that I want to get. So here, let's bring this in. Let's take a little peek. It's close. Close enough. Maybe. Let's add a little more blue. Okay. I'm just going to go over what I did and just kind of paint over the grass green umbrella handle that I did. And I'm actually just going to paint in all of it because I don't want any of that white showing. And this, my friends, oh, little bloop down there, but who cares? This, my friends, is us editing in some additional elements for this project. Digging it. Okay. Love that. Love it. Now, not so worried about this connection between here and here because our sentiment's going to go right over top of that. So Cheryl just said, I get it. The mind and the mouth. Same things happen to teachers. That's true. Like, you think one thing and something different comes out. So you just never know. And, you know, sometimes you just make up words along the way. All right, I'm digging the way this card looks. It's definitely got some splooshies happening. We could also go back in, but here's what I'm afraid of. If we add more colors, all those colors that we mixed, if we add more in, that background is going to get so day glowy, so to speak, that we're going to lose the contrast of our yellows in our flower here. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got the Best Things in Life Aren't Things that I stamped down, and that's from the Best Things in Life stamp set. And I just stamped it down on a piece of watercolor paper. Then I just went and did these little trimmed it out. I'm going to put that, let's take a little bit of our foam tape here. Pop some tape up. Sploosh. Just tearing some tape. Tearing some tape. Pop this on. And see how I'm going to use that. I'm going to cover that little flick we got going there and lay that right over top. Can't tell if it's straight. Don't have my glasses on. Can't tell if it's straight. Digging it. Loving the way that looks. Okay. So, do we need? Nah, we don't. So here was the inspiration. And on this one, I have some of those beautiful crystal ball. Oops, I just flicked that one off. Did you see that? I just flicked that right off. Crystal ball sequins from Gina K. I absolutely love. We're going to leave this be the way it is. And I am digging it. Okay, friends, quick recap. We worked on creating your own watercolor backgrounds using Emboss Resist for our technique, but we focused a lot on our watercolor mixing today, kind of in theme with what we've been doing, with going from our yellows to our phthalo blues and creating all those fun colors in between to create this really super cool background. And I'm digging it. And somehow my camera got all wonky again because, yeah, and you can hear my chair too. So let's head back to the front camera and we'll end this tutorial for today. But anyway, I'm so excited that you could join me today, friends. Today's tutorial was super fun. You can see I'm really excited. I love it when we're getting out our watercolor and we're doing our Craft Your Joy lab experiments and we're playing and creating something new. So I hope you got a lot of value out of today's tutorial. And if you're at all interested, take a look at the links below in the description. Subscribe to my email list. Join my free community in my Craft Your Joy classroom. I share a lot of content in that free community that I'm not sharing out on social media. And every Friday, the people who are part of that community get an extra email sent to them with the the updates of what's new in the community for the week. So I'm seeing everybody kind of chat in the chat. Thanks so much for joining me. And I'm sending you, I know it's Thursday and usually I do this on Friday, but I won't be back for a live next week. I will be on vacation, spending a little time with my family and friends, and I'll be back the following week. So there may be a video that'll come out next week by me, but can't guarantee that. So I know for sure that I won't be live. So, friends, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so grateful that you could spend this time with me as I send you into the rest of the week to craft your joy. And yeah, I'll see you next time. And don't hesitate to ask any questions if you're watching this on the replay. It's me that comes in and answers them. So thanks so much, friends, for being here. And I'll see you next time. Bye, friends.